This is Red Cornwall, a socialist podcast coming out of the north of the Duchy. So let's move on to the Labour Green Industrial Revolution event that took place down at Heartlands in Poole near Camborne. And what was all that about?
Well,
I was there, but that was me leading into a please speak about this event.
Please speak,
so,
Stephen.
Steve, what was all that about?
Well, Jane.
Yes, Steve.
The Labour Party is responding to the climate emergency. We acknowledge the climate emergency, but we have a set of solutions. They are Labour solutions where the Labour Party makes big interventions into the economy and produces radical, big plans.
And on that note, let's listen to what Rebecca Long-Bailey had to say at the launch event last weekend.
You didn't let me down. I think we've had to get extra chairs to bring into this event, and I'm so pleased to see so many of you here today. Yeah. Now, just as a side story, that I've got a special place in my heart for Cornwall. The very first proper holiday I ever went on when I was 10 was to Mullion, and there was something about Cornwall that captured me. So ever since then, I've always called Cornwall my spiritual home. It was the people and the magical place that Cornwall is that draws me and my family back every year near enough now to spend our quality time. But it's the innovation and the passion within the people of Cornwall that I think can make this one of the places that will lead the green industrial revolution, and that's exciting. We pushed Parliament recently to declare a climate emergency, and I'm pleased to hear that Cornwall Council, some of our fantastic councillors are here today. They've done exactly the same thing. But that's just the first step. The great task ahead is now building a detailed plan for implementation with a mass movement of people ready to make it happen. And that's why we're here today in Cornwall, to hear about the new sectors and technologies that will be right at the heart of the green industrial revolution. Now, I don't need to tell you that Cornwall is naturally blessed when it comes to looking at the renewable energies of the future, whether it's solar, wind, wave power, hydro or geothermal energy. The global market for floating offshore wind could be twice the size of fixed installations, and the southwest, with its deep waters, reliable wind, is perfectly positioned to lead the world in the development and commercialisation of large-scale deployment of floating arrays. I know that there's a lot of people who are on board with tackling climate change, but there are many within our communities who know it's an issue, but they're more bothered about putting food on the table, making ends meet. And to make this movement really work, we have to create excitement and show these people that we're not just tackling climate change, we're transforming our economy, we're making sure that their children have jobs in these new industries and that they're well paid, secure jobs, so that we don't see a brain drain from Cornwall when people reach the age of 18, because there are real industries here that make people want to stay and invest economically in their local communities.
Paul Farmer was also there. He's the parliamentary candidate in the next general election for the constituency of Camborne, Redruth and Hayle.
And personally, it's kind of very sad to me that we have to keep looking back into the past for any kind of role and glory for Cornwall. I want to be able to look at the future. I want to be able to restore Cornwall's vision of myself. Okay, so we're talking about a new green industrial revolution, and this is an engineering place. And this new industrial revolution will be predicated on green engineering. We can make things here. We can make things again. We can be at the forefront of this. But we need investment. We need investment in this area. We need Labour's plans for new regional investment banks. We need this to make this place work again, because at the moment it is slowly grinding to a halt.
Fantastic. And now for the most thrilling part of this podcast.
I'm excited.
I could tell. Now we have Rebecca Log-Bailey and Barry Gardiner being grilled by Steve Haynes and my good self. No, my bad self. That's it.
You were bad.
I was very bad.
My daughter helped organise a school climate strike and protest in Bude last month. How do you feel the Labour Green Industrial Revolution can address many of her generation's concerns?
That's brilliant. That's fantastic, and tell her well done from me. And I think what needs to be really kind of emphasised is that it's not just about the Labour Party. The only way we're going to transform is if we have a movement, and people like your daughter have put it on the political agenda. We had 2 weeks where all the media talked about was Extinction Rebellion and climate strikes, and that hasn't happened for 2 years because everything else has all been about Brexit, and it was because of people like your daughter that put it right at the top of the agenda and have pushed the government to legislating to commit to net zero by 2050, and that's no mean feat. But what we need to see now is more pressure, and we're going to do that in the Labour Party, but we've got to say that it's not just Barry and me and people in the shadow cabinet that are going to come up with these ideas. It's people like yourself and your daughter, and at events today where we can find out what places like Cornwall need to see and how we can support that going forward.
A very local one. Cornwall has a limited rail network and a bus service run down by decades of underinvestment, resulting in a lot of Cornish people relying on cars because of the rural location. How can the Labour government help areas like this convert to low-carbon transport?
Because it's not all about energy generation. It's also about ensuring that the basic public transport infrastructure is there, which at the moment it's just not. The bus services, the rail services here are appalling. I'm not telling local people anything they don't know all too well, but also making sure that there is a national programme that is about regional investment. And that's why, if you look at the transformation fund that we've been talking about, you're talking £500 billion, but doing it through regional banks, that's doing regional investment, that's making sure that the money is there for the transformation of local public services. I mean, if you look at what we did in terms of Andy McDonald's announcement on the bus services, just the other, that I can't remember, what was it, 1.3? I can't remember the figure, but the money that we've pledged to put in will simply replace all the bus services that have been lost in the past 9 years, right? That's all that's doing. And then what you've got to think is, on top of that, what we need to do is we need to be saying, well, how do we make sure that those buses are not polluting buses, that they are either hydrogen or that they're electric, and making sure that you transform the system in that way. So people love talking about, electric vehicles when they're thinking of posh Teslas to drive around, right? Because they still produce the particulates, they've still got their own pollution problems, because that's what's produced from the brake linings and the rubber hitting the road. The real challenge is actually to make sure that people are not using private vehicles nearly as much, because there's a decent public service available to them. And that's what Labour's about. It's trying to say, look, there's a better way of doing this. And that's the investment that we want to see. So it's not, by all means, let's have parking bays for plug-in hybrids or for plug-in electric vehicles to encourage and incentivize people to switch over. All of that is good. We need as much change as possible, as quickly as possible. But don't think it's all about private. It's about public provision of those services that actually the poorest people in our communities rely on, they need, and this government has taken away.
Thank you so much.
And it was at this point in the interview that I stuck my proverbial oar in. North Cornwall CLP is presenting a motion at conference this year, rather controversially, to recognise a Cornwall Labour Party so we can be more self-sufficient, basically administer our own local Cornish affairs. What are your thoughts on that? Silence.
Hello. Well, I mean, I think it's quite clear, as I say, having a Celtic background myself, I was very aware at a young age when we were coming on holiday to Cornwall the importance of identity to Cornish people, and that's something to be celebrated, to be proud of where you're from, to be proud of making sure that people know where you're from. And I think anything that we do in the Labour Party has to, encourage that strong identity. We have a really strong identity in Salford. I think we'd set us up as a separate People's Republic, given half a chance with a wall around it. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. But we want to make sure that we're recognised as a constituency party, that we're not part of Manchester, we're a city in our own right, and our party structures need to be geared up to be able to do that. So I think the message going out is that any support that we can give to any CLPs in Cornwall to feel that they're able to establish their identity within the party is not anything that's an untoward thing.
Identity is really important because it's about your self-respect as a community, right? But community has got a word inside it, and it's unity. And we should never forget, in the Labour movement, the biggest message we have is unity is strength. And if we forget that in a retreat to identity, we've lost the big picture. So yes, community identity, absolutely pride in one's community, the confidence that we can do it here, but let's not lose that big picture.
So there you have it. Red Cornwall strikes again. I hope you enjoyed our little jaunt down to Camborne. You've been listening to Red Cornwall, a socialist podcast coming to you from the north of the Duchy.